Hello, this is Always. Always is the program that comes from the Academy for Lifelong Learning on Cape Cod Community College in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Here at the Academy for Lifelong Learning, we have many courses. This coming semester, we have about 60 courses. And it's for the members of Cape Cod who are 50 years old and older. That we have our new curriculum is posted on our Facebook page, and we'd like to have you give us a look at capecodall.org. Here on the program, Always, we like to spotlight our courses. We like to spotlight our special events, but our favorite thing is to spotlight our coordinators who come from all sorts of backgrounds, who come from all over the country, come from various colleges. Some are even teaching at some very, very renowned colleges, and we have them being coordinators here for us at the Academy of Lifelong Learning. And we need to give them a very big thank you because they do this all voluntarily. So today I have with me one of our very talented coordinators, Richard Slapsys. And Richard is going to talk to us a little bit about his background, but he's also going to talk to us about the courses that he's taught at the Academy of Lifelong Learning, and maybe even some that he plans to teach in the future. So Richard, for me and the rest of the members of the Academy for Lifelong Learning, thank you very much for your time this morning. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I was at the University of Massachusetts Lowell campus for 28 years and retired in 2014. My wife and I retired to Falmouth on Cape Cod around 2016 full time. And it was around that time that I was introduced to the Academy for Lifelong Learning as a student. And I thought, well, enjoying the academic atmosphere so much that I'd love to take courses and get to meet people and continue learning. So I took a course with Lou Taylor on music. I think it was the Beatles he did, and a wonderful art course with Stephen Pastore, who is also a coordinator here. And I said, as I found out that the ALL was looking for coordinators, I said, well, I do have some teaching experience, so why don't I give it a shot? So I decided initially to do a literature course on the science fiction of H.G. Wells, one of my favorite authors and books I grew up with as a child in high school and so on, the science fiction novels. And that went fairly well. It was a small group, but it was a good, intense group who actually enjoyed reading those novels. Then I decided I was going to expand into film courses because film has always been a love of my life since my childhood. In my youth, I remember my mother used to drag me to a movie theater that was 2 blocks away from where we were living to see films, and she actually on school nights would let me stay up late to watch old movies on TV. So it became a lifelong love of mine, and I have been enjoying, films from mostly from Hollywood in the 1940s, 30s, and so on. And I decided, well, why don't I put together a course, at least one course on these films? And I was able to then introduce a course called Film Noir, which was a specific genre that occurred in the post-war years in America into the 1950s, and it became a fairly popular course. And actually followed it up with a second film noir course to extend the number of films to talk about and show, and the group was very enthusiastic. I find here at the Academy a number of diehard film buffs who not only enjoyed taking the classes, but helped to to also introduce their own thoughts and ideas in the class. So I learned from them as well. So I decided to stay with film, and over the next few years, I did a class on the classic Universal horror films from the 1930s, which was also a good group that enjoyed those old Frankenstein, Dracula movies that they made, and they were a lot of fun to look over again and to talk about. And the last course I did recently was on the gangster films from the 1930s, which included, the great classic films of James Cagney, Edward G. Robinson, Paul Muni, and so on. So teaching the film classes has been a joy for me. Returning to these films after many years, having seen them over and over, was also a joy. And the enthusiasm of the participants in the class was tremendous. It was just a great feeling. So I have to say, being a coordinator and a student at the Academy of Lifelong Learning has been a tremendous investment for me in my retirement, and something that I've always enjoyed doing and will continue to do so.
Well, we can't thank you enough.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
As we said, everybody here at the Academy needs to volunteer. So all we can say is thank you. Now, one of your courses was called a mob of angry villagers. Now that title grabs my attention. Could you tell me about that course?
Okay, many of those films were set in these European villages where you had a mayor and townspeople, and of course you had the castle where Dracula and Frankenstein were doing their thing. And so in referring to some reference books on that era to get detailed information, one of the chapters was called A Mob of Angry Villagers, and that was referring to the people in the villages who would run to the mayor's office and protest the activity going on in the castle up on the hill where they see lights flashing. And that's where Dr. Frankenstein was creating his monster, or where Dracula was, presiding and looking for his victims. So I decided to call the class A Mob of Angry Villagers based on that particular concept that was included in many of the films.
I picture the angry villagers running towards the mayor with the torches in hand.
Holding torches.
Didn't they all have torches?
Running in the hills, chasing the monster. Yeah, that's a classic scene from the original Frankenstein movie.
Yeah.
And there was an unfortunate scene in that film where Frankenstein monster does kill a little child inadvertently, not knowing what it was doing, and that motivated the crowd there to go after him. And finally at the end, he supposedly was killed falling off of a burning windmill. However, Universal Studios says, we have something good here, let's go with it. And then they produced in 1935 the film called Bride of Frankenstein, which then continued the story. And many critics and film historians consider that even a better film than the original. Having viewed both of those in the class, it just made me think of what masterpieces both of those films are, and maybe lightly taken by film buffs and perhaps film historians. I still think those films are alive, even made so many years ago.
They're alive, just like Frankenstein.
Right.
Just like Frankenstein
Exactly.
was.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun to me.
It is. It's fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun to go to class and be able to watch movies.
Well, the way I do it is I choose excerpts from the films to show in the class themselves, of which highlights the film, highlights of film techniques like camera work, lighting, setting, and so on. And the students have the option of viewing them either before or after on their own. I have attended a film class here where you would see the film at home first and then spend the class time discussing it. So I kind of chose to go the other way because showing the excerpts in the class really highlighted how good these films were. And so shortly before the class, I would view the film and I would closely mark the areas of where to go to in the film itself on DVD. So I was able to show the excerpts and have enough class time to discuss what was going on. And all of these films are all available on DVDs and quite often shown on classic television channels like Turner Classic Movies. So they're very much available. So that was also a consideration of mine. I didn't want to include too many obscure films that would be hard to find for people to see or myself to see, to show pieces of. So that helped a lot. And the interaction with the film excerpts in the class discussion worked very well.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, it sounds to me like these classes are all in-person classes.
Yes, I prefer in person. I have been taking on and off one course on Zoom with another coordinator doing film, and there seems to be always technical problems with Zoom of some sort. Nothing major, but I always felt more comfortable in the classroom being face to face with the students.
Yeah. Yeah. Zoom itself is technical, but then you're trying to show movies. So that's, that's sort of a double technicality there.
Right.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah. My teaching experience at the university was in class well before COVID. And, so I was used to that experience, and having students in the class face to face to me was preferable.
Richard, you didn't mention what you taught at Lowell. What did you teach?
Oh, and when I was at UMass Lowell, I was assigned to the reference department of the library, and I adjunct taught at the English department, and I did classes on American culture, which included showing films, documentaries and other films. One in particular was a class on sports culture in America, which was very popular. It was highly attended, and I would get many college athletes in the class, which was very helpful. And there were documentaries, of course, on various sports, and there was one major film that I would show in that class, a great film from 1949 called The Setup, a boxing film, and it had so much great technique in it, and it was a wonderful story. So I showed that to classes of 19 and 20-year-old students, a film from 1949, which they would never be familiar with. And they actually, the response was 99% enjoyable, and they loved the film. And so that spurred me on to doing more film, specifically in classes. So the teaching experience at UMass was quite enriching. And in the library, I would be doing classes in research technique. So, incoming freshman students would come in the fall, and the English department would assign each class 1 hour, class hour in the library laboratory, which was, of course, computer labs. And we would show them how to do the actual research on the library catalog and other resources that the library provided. So I was kind of split between two departments.
Okay, well, really interesting, but I can see how you segued into the theater.
So having retired in 2014, the opportunity to continue an academic experience to me was very enlightening.
Yeah, and that's what we try to provide here at the Academy for Lifelong Learning. We try to provide a forum for people who would like to continue with their backgrounds and things that they feel like they have a strength in, but also in doing something that they would never have done or would never have taught, or a course they would never have taken, because we just had other constraints at other points in our lives. So so we do try to provide the forums for that, and but so that if we came into your class, so if I was in your class, what would that be like? I mean, would there be a lot of talking with your students? Would there be a lot of letting them take the lead? What would one of your classes look like?
Well, as they were coming in at the very beginning, I would either try to enlighten the class, the mood of the class, with either a silly story or an anecdote from Hollywood history, or talk about some current films that are out there now. Has anyone seen this? Has anyone seen that? And then then delve into the material of the class for the older films. My favorite period of film history is the 1930s and 40s in Hollywood. I enjoy foreign films very much as well, and of course there are periods of film that are historic, such as the 1960s, and there are books out there that on whole decades of films, the 70s, the 80s. So film history is a very wide open subject to study, and I just like to focus on those wonderful movies from the 1930s and 40s that were made in Hollywood under the old studio system, which I thought worked very well at the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and all things change, certainly with
Yes,
technology.
by the 1950s, the introduction of television altered the way film studios were working, and many of the great actors, um, such as Betty Davis, Humphrey Bogart, Edward G. Robinson, James Cagney, who were assigned, contracted to studios such as Warner Brothers and MGM, would then go out independently and make films either with their own production companies like Bogart did, and or sign up with other independent companies and do sort of sell their services to independent filmmakers. So many of the films of the mid to late 50s that these famous actors did were not in the studio system, and they were able then to take more chances, to take on more demanding roles. One of the great cliches of Hollywood history at that time in the studios was how many actors were given roles that they were not thrilled with, but they were assigned to these films. They had contracts, and if they declined to do the film, they'd go on suspension. Very famous with Betty Davis and her suspensions from films, and she wanted better roles. And so it's just a wonderful kind of period of time to just study how these films were being made.
Richard, if you were going to do another class, if you're going to teach in the future,
Mhm.
do you have any ideas about what you would do? Would you do Mob of Angry Villagers again, or
Well, I did
more?
actually repeat the film noir class once because of its popularity. And in my last class, as it was ending on the last day, one of the students says, "What are you doing next?" And so I threw out the idea of doing Hollywood Westerns, and I left it open, and they seemed enthused.
Mhm.
So I thought, here's another genre of very popular films that began as far as back as late silent films. And the early 30s was a very popular uh, time period for Westerns. John Wayne made dozens back then before he was a well-known star. And then there are classic films that go from 1939 to the 1950s. So I was thinking about doing Western films next, a kind of a broad general study of what are the great classic Western movies made from the 30s to the 50s.
I can see how that would have a lot of interest here, because a
Mhm.
lot of us would be in that age level. Well, that would remind us of our childhood.
Yeah,
You know, all those old westerns. And
Yeah.
I could see where that would be very popular.
Yeah.
So,
Then-
we're gonna look forward to it.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to preparing it. I do have to say, preparation for the classes takes a lot of time, but you're doing something that you love.
Mhm.
So the research work and putting together the clips of films is all a lot of fun to do.
Yes, yeah, I can agree with that.
Mhm.
And I also agree with Richard when he said, and we learn from our students.
We do, yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why our instructors are called coordinators, because it's a learning experience for the instructors as
Mhm.
well as the
Mhm.
students, hopefully. But that is the beauty of lifelong learning. So, well, Richard, I wanted to thank you for your time. It's a
Well,
very cold morning.
my pleasure, yeah.
And I really want to thank you for being here. And I'd like to remind anybody that's watching us to please check us out on local cable channel 26. We are on television on Thursdays at at 2:30 p.m. and on Saturdays at 11:30 p.m. So you can turn in that and see my interview with Richard or any one of a number of other very interesting coordinators that we have at the Academy for Lifelong Learning. We can also be found at our site, which is capecodall.org, or on our Facebook page. So please check out our Facebook page and please like us on Facebook. Is that all of those clicks really do mean something to us. So I'd like again to thank Richard Slapsys for coming in, talking about his background, his past courses, his future courses, and as always, I thank you for listening and for watching us. So from myself, Joan Friedman, Richard Slapsys, and all of us here at the Academy of Lifelong Learning, goodbye and thank you.